Hey guys, it's Paradise, and we actually got a chance to take a look at a preview build for Star Wars Outlaws. So today we're going to go over the different topics that caught our eye within the game, what we're specifically excited about, and what we think could have been done better. But first, we want to give a huge thank you to Ubisoft for giving us the opportunity to check out this preview build. The game is going to come out on August 30th on all major platforms, so if you want to learn more about the game in the run-up to launch, we've got you covered here, and definitely keep your eye out when it releases. Let's kick it off by going over the actual world building. Ubisoft, to be fair, have done an amazing job nailing the actual setting, and it really does feel like you're playing through your own Star Wars movie. In the preview, we got to visit 2 of the major planets that will be available in the game. The first is Tashara, and it was a fairly grounded planet with sort of windswept plains, rocky mountains, and sort of savanna-esque vegetation. While it wasn't as desolate as some other iconic Star Wars planets, it did still manage to convey that classic backwater feel. This was then emphasized by the handful of outposts that were really dotted around the place. The main highlight of this place was definitely the capital city, a tightly packed settlement nestled under a set of tall mountains. The city itself did look pretty amazing in the distance, and its design really does capture the feel of those Star Wars main hubs. As you enter, you're met with the classic Imperial checkpoint kind of feel where it's also clinical and oppressive. After this, you then make your way into the dimly lit city streets, and the world building really shines in here because throughout this area there is small exploration segments, and we found ourselves smiling when we could spot something in the background that we actually recognized from Star Wars. This could be things like B-1 battle droid parts that were on sale in a busy market, or just one of the iconic alien races. This was then further expanded on in the actual conversations that you hear around you rather than just items in the environment, with characters talking in iconic languages like Huttese. All of these things together really did help sell the actual setting and environment and feel of Star Wars, especially as a longtime fan of Star Wars, so this did really make you feel at home. The second planet we got to play on was Kijimi, which is an established location within Star Wars' canon, having appeared in Rise of the Skywalker back in 2019. Fans will recognize the very Japanese-inspired buildings and layout of the city, as well as the ever-present snowfall. While we didn't get to explore much outside of the city in this place, it was a very densely packed hub, dripping in its own culture, gangs, and themes, and while we generally are a bigger fan of the prequels rather than the newer stuff, getting to explore a planet that we did see in a movie was actually pretty cool, and pretty exciting to learn more about the local gangs with things like the Ashiga clan, who are kind of similar to Mandalorians as they sort of have a thing for helmets. The Empire is also mentioned and would make frequent appearances throughout what we got to play, which is important as the game is set between The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, so they're basically at the height of their power. However, the game makes it very clear that while they're powerful, they can't be everywhere at once, especially since they're fully focused on taking down the Rebel Alliance. This can be seen throughout their sparse patrols on various planets, as well as the actual rise of the Syndicates as well. Overall, when it comes to the immersion and world building, Star Wars Outlaws has really pulled out all of the stops to make you feel like you are in the Star Wars universe. Although we should say it's more specifically like you're in the seedy underbelly side of the universe, as seen through the eyes of the scoundrel K-Vess who we play. Now, I'm sure like many of you, you might be like us and be more of a Jedi Sith kind of guy when it comes to Star Wars, but the game definitely hits that scoundrel fantasy feeling perfectly, and to be honest, who doesn't want to feel like they're playing Han Solo at least once in a game? So I think fans who really enjoy Star Wars more so for its rich world building, and who want to get more into the bounty hunter outlaw side of things, then there's going to be a lot here for you to enjoy. It seems to hit a lot of good notes, shows the underworld via visiting various cantinas, you're going to make deals with various syndicate members, you're going to be lying, cheating, and double-crossing to get information and credits, and of course, outmaneuvering the ever-present and powerful Empire. But now we need to talk more specifically about the gameplay and exploration. Each of the 2 planets had their own major settlements where a majority of the important quest givers were, but as mentioned before, we did get to explore Tashara in a bit more detail. When riding around on your speeder, you would come across events in the world that you could choose to take part of or skip, with things like firefights between 2 factions, speeder races, or even enemies looking to get even with you. It's good to note that exploring to even the furthest reaches of the map did seemed to be rewarded with various pickups and chests, some collectibles and even cosmetics. But dotted around the actual landscapes were various tinier settlements and buildings, some of which had NPCs offering side quests, as well as various lore tidbits throughout through readable data slates. Given the fact that we had limited time while playing, we of course didn't get to explore the open world quite as much as we would have liked, but I will say it did feel a bit on the lighter side compared to the major settlements. Also, in our preview, fast travel was disabled, so we really had to get used to manually traveling on the speeder, which did take a little bit of getting used to. But once we got the hang of using the speeder, it did feel serviceable but did leave a bit to be desired. That being said, it can be upgraded as you progress, so perhaps later in the game when it's fully upgraded it will feel a lot better to use. The settlements themselves, though, were packed full of secret areas, various items to collect, and different avenues to explore, with each having a variety of shops to buy upgrade materials for some of your various gear pieces, as well as several minigames and activities to play to make some credits. With things like sabacc that allow you to play out the true scoundrel fantasy of swindling people at cards, to various other playable minigames that sort of broke up the action. Each city is split in different syndicate zones, which depending on your reputation with those syndicates, can either be freely explored or becomes an active stealth zone where you can sneak about to get in. These locations did seem to have most of the secret loot chests though, some of these secrets even led to their own side quests. When it came to our gameplay, we did take more of a stealth approach, and we did enjoy using Kay's various suite of tools that help you out at this. Effectively, these zones become more like a puzzle to be solved rather than just blasting your way through, which you could do if you wanted to. I will be honest though, just going full blaster mode could be quite challenging at times, but we did really enjoy the way the areas were designed to allow you to have different approaches based on your playstyle, with things like different elevations, secret tunnels that could be hacked open, and various opportunities for parkour. The quests were also fairly fun to play, and were definitely a highlight to the gameplay. They had great stories attached to them with interesting characters, fairly dangerous scenarios, and some fun dialogue. One that particularly stood out to us was a mission that took us off-world into space, where we had to pose as a delivery ship to gain access to an Imperial space station. So with a mission like this, the tension was very high right from the beginning of the quest, and the character's more light-hearted demeanor did turn more serious. So we had to stealth our way through an entire station without alerting any of the stormtroopers and officers that were patrolling around, making for an intense situation, especially when being discovered didn't automatically mean that you failed the mission. Instead, you could disable alarms located around the place, which of course assumes that you can get to them undetected. This would then give you some time to dispatch everyone who may have spotted you without actually setting off the alarm and basically failing. There was also some situations where Kay's skills alone were not enough, but you do have the help of your sidekick Nyx, which to be honest we didn't fully utilize in our missions, and this is because we were a little worried if Nyx doing his own things would actually trigger us getting discovered. But when we did eventually use him, we were quite pleased with how good he actually was at distracting various enemies, giving a way for Kay to silently take them down while they basically are looking in another direction or dealing with Nyx in some other manner. On top of this, he acted as a way to allow you to see enemies through walls, which is super helpful for timing when to move around. Overall, we did think that Nyx's implementation was pretty good, and while it did take a little bit of time to learn how to use him, he was definitely a valuable asset to gameplay when it clicked. But now let's talk about the gunplay a little bit, because it was a bit more simple in comparison to all the other tricky stuff that you could do. We did find it a little stiff while aiming on the controller, but this could have just been due to the actual preview build or the PC that we were playing on, so we're not too sure about that. The only weapon that Kay will have access to at all times is her blaster pistol, which can be upgraded with various different modules. This can then be further improved and built upon, and we did think it was pretty cool that you had these several different tools on the same weapon to deal with different enemy types. Effectively, Kay can switch out her blaster from being a more traditional blaster module to being a stun mode, which can one-shot enemies and then goes on cooldowns. There was also an ion mode, which was very good at disrupting shields and dealing with droids, and you get access to a Red Dead Redemption style bullet time ability, where you could mark different enemies and then rapidly dispatch them. Kay can also pick up fallen enemies' weapons and temporarily use them, and even send out Nyx to go and bring one to her. These did have various different mechanics, but we found ourselves sticking to the basic E11 blaster due to the target-rich environment that you were basically always in. But But now let's touch on the space gameplay, because this is something we didn't actually expect to get hands-on time with, and we were pleasantly surprised when we got to blast off in our spaceship a short time after starting. The seamless nature of leaving the atmosphere paired with the iconic Star Wars visuals of going into hyperspace was definitely incredible and a highlight for us. This got us super immersed in the gameplay right away, and flying around did feel a bit more involved than you would expect. To be honest, the space combat did feel pretty solid. We especially liked that you could utilize a pursuit mode while dogfighting, making it pretty easy to track enemy ships, and is an awesome quality of life feature for people who tend to dislike piloting segments in games. You didn't only have access to your main gun, but you also had missiles to help with bigger ships, and I'm unsure just how far you can fly away from the planet, as we didn't really get enough time to fully explore space, but there did seem to be a decent amount of debris and ships in the distance. Overall, we found we enjoyed these stealth segments the most, as they really tested your abilities to think on your feet, and they allow you to best use all of the skills at your disposal. In comparison to this, the gunplay did feel a bit underwhelming, but the breadth of upgrades available in the full game do give us some hope that as you progress, that will start to feel a bit better. But now let's talk about the reputation system, as this is one of the main pillars of the game that we were most interested in discovering. You can constantly make decisions throughout the game that will affect your reputation with any given faction, and the devs have mentioned that you can expect this will fluctuate constantly. Gaining reputation with a syndicate will confer several bonuses to you, such as a set of syndicate-specific gear, access to their territories, discounts in their shops, as well as syndicate quests. These are like special quests that have a much larger payout than normal, and are basically a very lucrative way of gaining credits. Conversely, having a bad reputation with any given syndicate will cause them to send out hit squads against you, drive up their shop prices, and make entering their zones impossible without going full stealth mode. While we played, there were several opportunities to increase favor with various factions, and the easiest way of doing this was to do quests for them. However, there were several quests and moments in the story where you would be given a choice that, depending on who you choose, would massively affect your reputation. A good example of this would be at the end of an infiltration on an Imperial base. We were given a choice to screw over Pikes, which was the plan in the first place, or we could actually double cross our employers, the Crimson Dawn, instead. These choices do make it difficult to have positive reputation with all the various factions at the same time, but in a presentation given on the reputation system, it was mentioned that this is 100% possible to do, albeit just quite difficult. There was one small disappointment we had with this system though, which was the seeming omniscience of some of these factions. Going back to our example of the Imperial Space Station, the Crimson Dawn had basically hired us in secret to incriminate the Pike Syndicate by changing some records on the station. Choosing to follow through with this plan saw us gain a massive increase with the Crimson Dawn's reputation, but completely undid the reputation gain we had previously got for the Pikes, which was a little annoying since they wouldn't have really known that we were in the station doing this, so it shouldn't have really impacted our reputation. We felt like the reputation decrease was a touch unfair in this scenario, but we're hoping there are other examples of it being more rewarding for thinking more like a scoundrel in other choices later in the line in the game. Now let's talk about the gear, because Kay has access to a bunch of different gear pieces that are basically going to help you. These include various gadgets like her grappling hook and her data spike, which allows her to interact with and traverse the world. There was also her blaster pistol and its various modules that would change the way the weapon works, as we talked about before, and some of these could also be used on the environment to open up different pathways. The way that you gain abilities and their upgrades is by using experts, which are unique NPCs that give different expert quests in order to unlock these new functionalities. These experts aren't just marked on the map, so you will need to track them down through various different means. The example that we got to see in the preview was a way to upgrade our speeder. This gave us a temporary speed boost that would recharge after use. In order to unlock this though, we had to find intel on the expert first, which we just happened to receive after doing another quest. From here we could then track the expert and seek them out, which was a whole process that eventually gave us another quest to do. These expert quests did feel quite polished and fleshed out, pretty much as the story ones, with special dialogue and special locations, which upon completing, you would gain that ability or upgrade, which again for us was a way to bolster our speeder, which made traversing a lot faster. Given that these aren't mandatory quests, we do wonder just how much you'll be able to tread off the beaten path and actually gather these upgrades before going further in the main story. We say this because many others that did the preview event didn't actually unlock any of these upgrades, so we're wondering how rare or difficult these are to find, but some abilities were also necessary to progression, with some areas only being accessible when you have the Ion Blast upgrade. That's because this doesn't just disable droids and shields, but can be used to charge specific beacons around the world, which would then open various doors, vents, and so on. It seems like there's 8 experts in total, and each one has around 6 upgrades for their mechanic that they specifically specialize in, so when you're fully upgraded, there should be quite a lot of abilities to play with. So there you have it, that's all of our thoughts on what we actually got to play in Star Wars Outlaws. Do tell us what you think about all of this and what you're thinking of the game so far down in the comments below, and subscribe for more videos on your favorite games coming very, very soon.